Okay, quick time out, people. Quick time out, because it looks like it's being set up to be the sanctity of life versus the quality of life. And here's an important question. Can we get to a secular sanctity of life idea? So a secular sanctity of life idea from a sort of materialist or some sort of idea. And I'd like to talk about this guy here, just to my left or my right in the video, something like that, and what he says about it. So I wonder what your view is. Can you find life is of intrinsic value and worth without a God, as it were, on some materialist basis? So what's this guy? This guy's Ronald Dworkin. He's a significant ethicist, and he's interested in the idea of dementia. So he specialized in the philosophy of law, and the following case he looks at illustrates how modern ethical decision-making can become a bit tricky when it comes to medical ethics. In his book, Life's Dominion, Dworkin discusses the case of Margot, a 54-year-old Alzheimer's victim that was first described by a doctor called Andrew Furling, who met her when she was a medical student. According to Furling, with each arrival, Margot behaves as if she knows him without ever using his name. She says she reads mysteries, but Furkel notices that her place in the book jumps randomly from day to day. She feels good just sitting and humming to herself, nodding off liberally, occasionally turning to a fresh page. She takes abundant pleasure in simple acts, such as eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Furkel writes that despite her illness, maybe somehow because of it, Margot is undeniably one of the happiest peoples he's ever known. Dworkin raises the issue of whether Margot had, if she'd signed an advanced directive stating that she could not receive treatment for any serious life-threatening disease that she might contract after Alzheimer's had rendered her demented, whether that directive should now be honoured, given that she's not actually suffering. She's having a lovely time, Margot. Dworkin controversially argues that the decision made when Margot was mentally competent could still be honoured by those who are responsible for caring for her, even though her presumably demented state. She seems to be capable of enjoying life and might continue to do so if she was treated for any serious illness that she might develop. Just to note, Dworkin's conclusion might be different from that of the Benthamite Act utilitarian, especially if Margot's relatives and carers are of the view that she seems happy in her present state. And Singer's preference utilitarianism might also be difficult to apply here. Whose preferences should be honoured? Those of Margot before she got dementia? Those of Margot when she has dementia? Well, how competent is she in her present state? It's just really hard to say. Perhaps Singer might say that the present Margot has lost something of her original personhood, so cannot make choices, causing him to side with Dworkin. There's also Kant to consider. If Margot is to be considered a former member of the kingdom of ends, is she no longer fully rational? So what about Dworkin on this secular sanctity of life and euthanasia? Does he really believe in the sanctity of life? Can it be established? What's your view so far in his story? Just one more slide here. So unlike Singer, Dworkin suggests there can be a secular, non-religious understanding of the concept of the sanctity of life, according to which human beings are regarded as the highest product of evolution. Wow. That's special, isn't it? So humans' life can be seen as intrinsically important because we are the highest product of evolution. Why is that good? I mean, that's a really interesting argument, but is it coherent? So he's saying the concept is not out of date. Does this really defend the concept? For Dworkin, those on both sides of euthanasia debate have tended to lose sight of the common ground that exists between them on this point. Oh, really? For him, the issue is not whether the principle, the sanctity of life, should yield some other value, like humanity or compassion, but how life's sanctity should be understood and respected. So, is this really common ground? how the sanctity of life, is evolution really common ground for, or is he stretching it? He writes that making someone die in a way that others approve, that he believes a horrifying contradiction of his life, is a devastating, odious form of tyranny. On the other hand, for others, the struggle to stay alive, no matter how hopeless or how thin the life, expresses a virtue central to their lives, the virtue of defiance in the face of inevitable death. Dworkin therefore thinks that the laws we make about euthanasia should reflect the patient's right to self-determination as an expression of their sanctity, of their own individual existence, when it comes to deciding how their life should end. In other words, the law should be flexible enough to allow them to end their lives with dignity if they wish, whilst allowing others to fight on until the end if that's what they want to do. Well, is this coherent? In addition, he argues the state should encourage people to make provision for their future care themselves. By this, Dworkin means that the government should prompt people to make it known that their wishes would be, should they, for example, become terminally ill or involved in an accident which renders them brain dead. In cases where no prior wish has been expressed, he thinks the law should be, as far as possible, it should leave decisions in the hands of their relatives or other people close to them, whose sense of their own best interest is likely to be much sounder than some universal, theoretical, abstract judgment born in the stony walls where interest groups maneuver, political deals are done. He's critical of dignity in dying and some of these lobby groups and who stands behind it, the Humanist Association. Well, maybe he has a point there. Maybe he has a point. But he's also taking aim at the kind of Catholic moral tradition, which says it's not down to people and their interests. So what do you think of this attempt at creating a secular sanctity of life, an intrinsic value based on the idea of evolution? Still sounds a bit flexible to me. Is that what you think should happen? So a little note to Ben, a little time out, because there's so many great contributions to this debate on euthanasia. So I'll get back to the anthology now in the next video.